Hi guys, it's Kelly here. I'm back with another video, and this video is actually part of the Stamptember blog hop for Simon Says Stamp. So Stamptember's finally arrived, yay! I'm going to be using the Ornate background set, that's the main focal point of the card, and then for the sentiments I'm using Together and one called You've Got This, which I really love, just really encouraging sentiments. So this is the full-size Misty, and because this stamp is a cling stamp, so it's got foam in it, I took out the black piece, the black foam piece. I don't need it because this stamp already has foam in it. I put a scrap piece of paper behind my cardstock just so I wouldn't get black all over like the actual plastic part of my Misty, because I don't have the little paper inserts. So I inked this up with Intense Black ink from Simon Says Stamp, and because I'm only using part of the image, I only inked up really the right-hand side of it. I didn't get great coverage in the bottom left-hand corner, and that was just my own fault because I didn't take the ink over far enough. So yeah, if you don't put ink on something, it won't stamp. There's your little lesson for the day. So I stamped it a second time, and then made sure I just pushed really well, got good pressure on all of it. And I really was happy with the way it came out. This, it's a background stamp, but I wanted to just use part of it. And because I'm going to be doing coloring, I don't know about you guys, but when I get to coloring, I just start coloring all of the things. And so in order to avoid that, I actually took a Copic Safe pen and outlined the parts that I wanted to color. I'm going to be doing lots of shading on mine, but I wanted to show you why that's not necessary. You can pick just a couple of colors and fill this in just like this, and it's still really, really beautiful. So I picked my lightest colors and then just filled these in just so you could see what that would look like. And then also it helps if you're coloring a large image to kind of map out your colors so that you have a good balance of where they're at. So it was doubly helpful for to show you that it looks pretty, just colored in with a single layer, but also helped me to see where I wanted to put my colors. So now I'm going to be showing you just a couple of different things. One of the great things, it's almost like Zentangling this ornate background. I don't know if you've ever Zentangled. I do. But basically it's just images upon images that just kind of interlock. And one of the wonderful things about these is that you can color them any way you want. Like Christmas Miracle. You can make your own card any way you want. So there isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. And this is one of the things where one of the ways I like to get practice, because there's so many different options and so many different images that this is just a really good way to practice. And at the end of it, you have a beautiful piece that you can make into a card or frame or make into multiple cards. So basically, I'm just going to show you a couple of different ways that I color the elements that I used. So for this flower, I'm using the same pinks that I used for the mid-center. It's not really the center, the mid-center of the other flower. And then I added, for this flower, I added shading to the base, and then I also added it to the tips of the flowers. So leaving the highlight in that center. And this is just going to give it some dimension, which you can already see we're not even, we haven't even added in all the colors yet, and we're starting to really build up some dimension so that that flower looks like it's coming out from behind the element that's on top of it, and then also that the petals are lifted up off of one another. The way I color, start with my lightest color, go out to my darkest back into my lightest. The only thing that's different for me on this particular piece is typically I leave white in my highlight areas just because it really pops that contrast, but I didn't here because I filled them in beforehand, but I was fine with it. I was fine just having the lightest pink be the highlight. So then I just blended everything kind of back out. I'm on the lightest color here. And I know it seems silly sometimes to go over your darker colors with the lightest color, but it really does help the blending. If you're concerned about your light color lifting up too much of your dark, you don't have to go into the darkest areas, but it really is helpful in getting those colors to blend together. So I pick a couple of blues, and then like I'm just going to show you maybe one or two elements with each of the colors. I also use the blue to do kind of like a color blend transition, a blend transition. I don't even know what I'm saying. to group two color families together and make them blend. It doesn't even make any sense. I hope you know what I'm saying. On the yellow part, that's what I'm talking about, guys. Over there on that yellow part, I did add some shading with the blue, which created a kind of like a gradation into green that I thought looked pretty cool. And again, this is a good way to practice those things. So maybe you don't usually blend two color families together. Practice on a piece like this. I did add some darker shading where this part of the part of the circle comes into the page and goes off of the page, and then also kind of in the center for that blue part. For the green, I recently did a card for W+9, and I tried this kind of green combo. The base is a YG03, but then the rest of the shading is done with G's, and I really loved the way that it looked, so I decided I was going to use it again here just to get a little bit more practice with it. For this one, usually I do my shading for my leaves, my darkest shading for my leaves in the center, and then the edges are the lightest. For something different, I decided that I was actually going to outline this particular leaf with the darker color, and so then the middle would be the lightest color. And again, this is just me playing around, trying something different for myself, and just kept outlining it until it was mostly filled in, and then I went in with the YG03 and filled the whole thing in. I also used this G05 to add just some shading to that outline that's outside the leaf, where those parts would any part where 2 points meet is naturally darker. So I added some shading to that as well. The base for this one is actually a YG01, which is lighter than the 3, but that's what I thought I was going to be using when I first started. It's no big deal, just covered the whole thing up. And then I filled that in, and then I felt like the outline wasn't dark enough. So you can see I'm kind of messing around looking at it, and then just went back in and filled that in with the YG03 so everything matched. I didn't really love the way that that particular leaf looked, but in these kinds of pieces, they're so easy to fix. So if you color a part you don't like, for the love, please do not throw away your whole piece because there is a way to fix it. For this flower here, instead of doing the multiple shading like I did with the pink flower, I decided I was kind of going to color block it because it had so many different sections. So I just picked the Y's that I was using everywhere else in the card, and then just picked areas to fill it in completely with each different color. And then because the outside petal portion was so large, I did add some shading there, and also to give myself some dimension. I didn't want my petals to look so one-dimensional when everything else in the piece looks like it is multi-dimensional. And that's just something that you're going to have to make a choice about when you first start your card, because you can mess around and do whatever, and it's good to kind of mix and match. But my personal preference is that they all be on the same level of detail. Here's another way we're going to blend some color families. So I added some pink into that yellow portion, and then I'm going to add the Y38, and again, I'm using that flicking motion, and then the Y08, and then finishing off with the Y02, and it kind of like blends together down into that center portion of the flower. For the BGs, I colored in some of the smaller areas, like the background pieces that are in between the flowers, but then I also wanted some of the leaves to have that. For this one, doing something totally different, not doing the same thing that we did with the green leaf. For this one, I wanted to kind of highlight the detail that is drawn into the leaves. So there's some flourishes and what look like veins in the leaf. And so I really wanted those to be lighter so that they would pop out of the design. So here I am adding shading from where it's behind the other images. I am adding shading there, but then I'm adding shading from the inside portion. So the lightest portion will be on the outside. And this is just going to help make those little details that are drawn into this stamp kind of pop up. And like I said before, I work out from my lightest out to my darkest back into my lightest. And on the second round, I typically add more color. so that it starts to fill in that area, so that my midtones are my main color, which when you're coloring, your shadows, whatever your shadow color is, should have a minimal amount, and your highlights should have a minimal amount. The main colors should be your midtones. So I'm going to go back over with my lightest color just to make sure everything is good and blended. And then I did, later on, which apparently I cut out, I went back with the I think it was the BO2, and just kind of added some blue to the tips of those leaves. So in order to kind of make this my own, besides the coloring, I'm going to go in with a white gel pen and add some details. Sometimes, like in this case, I'm highlighting the details that are already drawn. So there's dots on those veins. There's also, the little flourish there that I outlined in white. And then other times I'm adding my own. And again, there is no right or wrong way to do this. Like, whatever makes you happy or whatever you want to practice, you do you. So I added some dots kind of to the center of this flower, and then I'm going to add some like dots to the petals. I added some diagonal lines. I wanted to really show you this green leaf because it does look different after the white gel pen is added, and I liked it so much more. So I went in and I kind of highlighted the details that were already drawn there with the white pen. But then there's lines that are drawn in that give this some detail. Well, I just picked some of the lines, not all of them, just some of them, and went over them in white. And so it creates a situation where one of the sides of the leaves is lighter than the other side. And I thought that looked really cool and made it much more interesting, and so that it wasn't just so dark. Once I was done adding all of the white detail, I like to outline all of my images. And that means even in something as complicated or as involved as this is, I still go back in and outline them because that's how I feel like my cards look the best. But this is totally optional. You don't have to do that. Once I was done with that, I'm going to fussy cut this out. I actually really kind of liked the way that it looked with just a portion of it colored and like the black and white in the background. I think it would be super cool to do kind of like a highlighting technique with something like this, but I didn't stamp my stamp all the way, so that wasn't an option for me. So I went with my original game plan, which was to cut it out. So fussy cutting, I'm right hand dominant, so I'm not moving my scissors. I'm moving my paper with the left hand, keeping my scissors straight. That's going to give you the best cut. Once that was all cut out, I'm going to go in with a Memento Tuxedo black marker and just go around the edges. If the portion that you decide to cut out, or anything you decide to fussy cut, is very intricate and it's hard for you to get in, put it flat down on a piece of scrap paper and then trace the edges. That will also work to get those edges black and clean them up. I pulled out my sentiment from my sets, and it says, "Together anything is possible." And I lined it up. Now I'm using my mini Misty versus the full Misty because I find that easier for sentiments, and it's really the one that I go to most often. So I'm going to stamp that this time in the black ink from Simon Says Stamp. It's one of my go-to inks for sentiment stamping. It's very crisp. So I'm going to stamp that down with the mini Misty, make sure I got good pressure. And then I wanted to pop this up, but I wanted to be able to mail it. So I actually have some scrap pieces of the white craft foam. And so I'm going to put my image down on top of it, and I'm going to trace it with a pencil. Then I will hold it behind my piece and kind of cut along in like after I cut it, then I'm going to put it up against there to make sure that none of the pieces hang over. And if I need to trim anything, I totally can. I'm going to use Tombow Mono multi-glue to adhere these down. And I just butted them up right next to each other. And I did that while I was tracing it as well, so I could make sure that everything would fit and be in the right place. And then here's me just making those little adjustments because, nothing's perfect. Can't nail it every time. So I'm putting those down, and it will really just pop up the design off of the card and just make it that much more interesting because we really only have that one focal point in this card. It's pretty clean and simple. So I'm going to adhere that to the bottom left-hand corner so that it pops up over my sentiment. I felt like the right hand side was a little empty, so I'm using some clear droplets to just lead the eye from the left hand side of the page to the right and also fill in that area. I prefer to adhere mine with glossy accents because then you can still see through the droplets. Some clear Wink of Stella basically all over everything. Then I'm going to adhere this to my card base. So I use my We Are Memory Keepers, it's a combo, trim and scoreboard. And then I don't adhere my piece to my card base until I'm sure that the inside stamped perfectly. So this part of the sentiment is actually from the You've Got This set, and it says, "You are strong and God is stronger, together you're unstoppable." And I really just loved that for encouragement. I have some crafty friends that are going through some hard times right now, and I thought that this would be just a perfect card to send them. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the panel to the card because I know that the inside stamped good. And then that is pretty much the whole card. So thank you so much for joining me. If you're watching at the beginning of September 2017, there is a full blog hop going on today, another one going on tomorrow. For more information, there is a link below in my blog, to my blog, and then there are tons of giveaways because Simon is just so generous. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.